right, Daf Tzadi Tes, Friday's Daf. So yesterday we were talking about the aisle of the Nazir, that we learn out that there's an exception to that rule, that we'll say bittul by that, but we won't say by other things. And the Gemara was working out what rule is it that we say is going to work by the aisle Nazir, but won't work by other kinds of ta'aruvisin. And let's pick it up at the second to bottom line on Tzadi Ches Amud Beis. Rava Omar le'nitzracha ella l'tam ke'ikr. So as opposed to the first teretz was it's le'nitzracha ella l'bihuda that says min b'mina is le'batel, but in this case it is batel. Now we're saying the uniqueness of the aisle Nazir is that tam is ke'ikr normal by kodshim. The tam, the flavor of something that's usr, is going to be as usr as the substance of that thing itself. Kamash mulan dehacha. Therefore the Bryce is telling us dafka in that case by the aisle Nazir that the tam of the kodshim will be shari. Moving over to Tamid Aleph. If you're telling me that the aisle Nazir, we'd say the tam ke'ikr is going to be batel, that by the aisle Nazir the tam is lav ke'ikr. So why don't we learn that out to everywhere else? To which the Gemara says, because Gali Rachman Gabe Chatas, there's a special Gzeres HaKasav by the carbon Chatas that the Torah tells us when non-Chatas basar like a shlamim or chulin comes into contact with a Chatas, that the Torah tells us Kol asher yiga b'basar yikdash, that whatever touches the meat and absorbs some of its tam will have that kedusha lihiyos kamayha, and it'll have the same din like the carbon Chatas whose flavor it taka was absorbing. And that is to say, she'im psula te pasel, that if that carbon Chatas is pasel, then the meat that touched it will also be likewise pasel. Vim ksheira te'achal kechamer shava, and if the Chatas is okay, then that meat will have the chumrah to be eaten like with all the chumras of that carbon Chatas. So you have the counter pressure of this Gzeres HaKasav of Kol Yisher Yiga B'Bsar Yikdash to counteract from the ligmar minei of the aisle Nazir. Ligmar mehai, who says to which way to go? Maybe we should learn it from the Zroya of the aisle Nazir and say that they're going to be bottle. Teretz says because chidishu, the case of that Zroya is taka chidish. Chidish loy gamrinan. Well, if that's the case, the same way Kash we asked beforehand, lemeya v'shishim nami loy ligmar. Remember, the whole context of having this issue was because we were using the aisle Nazir to teach us the bittul b'shishim or the bittul b'meya, depending on your shita. So that also shouldn't be learned from theirs. To which the Gemara says, no, atu anon l'kula gamrinan. We're learning a kula? No, it's not true, because l'chumra ko gamrinan. We're learning a chumra to midiraisa beruba batal. Be'etzem really als bittul b'raiv, it should be mavatal. The Torah is saying a chumra that in order to be mavatal the tam of a dvar isser, you either need 60 keneged or 100 keneged. That's a chumra, not a kula, and therefore the chumra we can learn out b'chol ter kula. Now we're up to the third mahalach, which is Ravina Amar le'nitzracha el makam chatach. The Bryce is saying that there's a uniqueness and a chiddush by the aisle Nazir, is talking only about that area where the actual cutting took place, meaning it is an example for kol ter kula legabe bittul. But this that the aisle Nazir is unique is only legabe that kula, that in the makam of the chaticha there's a kula. De Amar makam chatach bi'alma zaser, but here v'hacha, by the case of this zraya that was cut by the aisle Nazir, it's going to be mutter. And you might remember this earlier from Daf Samach by the vlad that comes out of the animal, that the makam chatas has a special chumrah, but that chumrah will not exist by the aisle Nazir. Yosef Rav Dimi v'komer lo lahashmaitza, Amar le'abaya v'chol yisurim sh'batayra b'meya. All yisurim are going to be usr, but they can be batal 1 to 100. The Mishnah says in the second parak of Masechta Arla, Lama Amru kol ha'mechametz u'mesabel u'midamea lahachmir. The Mishnah Arla that's giving these kind of categories and gives these headings, that whenever you have a dover that's mechametz, that leavens a chulin with truma or spices, or you mix truma and chulin by putting them together in one pot, that we're always going to be machmir legabe min b'minai, meaning the truma and the chulin are made out of the same min. So we're machmir and we aser this dough if either you can taste the tam, or even if you can't taste it but it's less than 1 to 100. So that's min b'minai lahakal ulahachmir. So when do we say it's going to be lahachmir that's min b'minai? Lahakal ulahachmir min b'sheina minai. Kate said, what's that example? That's grisin shenaspashlu imo adoshim. So you have two different minim. You got your grisim cooking with together the adoshim, and the grisim over here are going to be truma, and they're being mixed with the adoshim of chulin. Im yesh bohem b'nai saying tam. If the grisin can actually give taste into this mixture, then bein im yesh bohem lahalos b'mei ve'echad. I don't care if there's 101 or bein ein bohem lahalos b'mei ve'echad. It's going to be usher because I can taste the davar usher. But ein bohem b'nai saying tam. But let's say I can't taste the grisin anymore. Ben sheyesh bohem lahalos b'mei ve'echad or bein ein bohem lahalos b'mei ve'echad. Then it'll be mutter. But what does the Mishnah say? Ein bohem lahalos b'mei ve'echad. The Mishnah tells us in this last case that when the truma is mixed with something that's not its same min and you can't taste it, we're mekel, even though there's not enough to be mevatel at 101. So LMI, what are we talking about? How much was there to be mevatel? La b'shishim. So l'chayra, a davar aser that gets mixed with a davar heter is not going to be nicein tam if it's mevatel in 60. Turning over to Tamid Beis, la yizak Rav Dimi b'meya. The Mishnah is telling us that in the case we don't say the chumrah of truma, which requires 101, but instead only needs b'meya. So it's not a 101, but rather it's just 100, but it's certainly not going to be 60. Correct the Gemara, v'hom duration b'meya have a seifa b'shishim. Since the Mishnah's first part of the Mishnah, when truma was being mixed with chulin in min b'minai, that was a 1 to 100. So l'chayra, when we're talking about truma mixed with chulin of einai minai, it should be 1 to 60. Dik tani reisha, because we learned in the first part of the Mishnah, l'hachmer min uminai. Kate said, what's that case? That's sa'ar shel chitin shenafel le'isas chitin. gluten. It's all wheat, so it's all min b'mina. V'yesh boi kedei lahachmitz. Bein yesh boi kedei lahalos b'mei ve'echad, or bein ein boi kedei lahalos b'mei ve'echad. It's going to be aser because it's all min b'mina. Ein boi lahalos b'mei ve'echad. Also, if there's not enough in the dough to be mavatlet in 101, and bein sheyesh boi kedei lachametz, or bein ein boi kedei lachametz, it'll be aser because if the whole dough doesn't have 100 times the chimetz of the truma, it's going to be aser whether or not you could taste. And that's the unique chumrah by truma by min b'mina. That's not by min b'sheina mina. So frek the Gemara now. So Reisha of the Sefer Meir, you tell me both cases in the Mishnah are both talking about 100. It seems strange the Mishnah would give the same case twice. And l'chara, there's no difference in the two cases. Zok Rav Dimi back, lie. They're both talking about 100, but Reisha b'meya v'chad, it's 101 parts chulin, the Sefer b'meya, whereas the more kuladika thing, which is the next part of the Mishnah, is talking about only 100 parts, not 101 parts. So what are we saying here? That according to Rav Dimi, that when Ravasi says 101 in both the earlier and later parts of the Mishnah, he actually means 101 parts of chulin. So frekta baya, v'chiyesh boi kedei lachametz, if 101 means 101 chulin parts, how can the Mishnah say that when there is in the chimutz enough to be mechametz the isa is going to be usher even if there's 101, but may have a bottle, since there's no way you're going to have any tam anymore, to which Rav Dimi was ishtik. Sounded like he was maskim. Omar lei, so to buy it back to Rav Dimi, v'dil mashani sa'ar de chimutz kasha. You have different levels of how strong the chimutz is, and therefore it's shaykh that a piece of this chimutz is able to actually impart a tam into 101 times its size. So Omar lei, so Rav Dimi back to Abaya, ad kartan milsa de Omar Rav Asi b'Rabbi Chanina. You reminded me of something that Rav Asi b'Rabbi Chanina had said, that loy kol shiur and shavin, they're not all the same. Shari tzir shiur karvel masayim. Really, a not kosher fish brine could give its flavor 1 to 200. Ditzanan, as we learned in the Mishnah in the 10th parak of Trumas, dag tamei tzirai aser, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, revius b'sasayim. So you see that there are going to be different levels of how strong something can actually be. But now that we brought up this thing about the fish brine, frak the Gemara of Omer Rabbi Yehuda min b'mina lebatel. So how can it be understood that according to Rabbi Yehuda there is a shaykh bittel over here? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda it's mashma that if you have a revius with more than sasayim, it'll be bottle. And for the Gemara, shani tzir desea bialmu. This fish brine is taka different because it's only considered the moisture from the fish as a result of the salting of the fish, but it's not really part of the fish itself. And therefore, min ha-Torah, this is the way Tosfos learns, it's actually going to be mutter. It's only also midrabanan, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda that says min b'minai is not bottle, is only by deraisa dekazachim, but not for only things that are also midrabanan. This itself is not so pashut la halacha, whether or not Rabbi Yehuda was saying is halacha only by deraisa and by derabanans, but that's how we'll learn this. Okay, now getting back to the Mishnah that says if you cook an entire yarech with the gira nosha, then it's nice ein tam. So Kate said Misharina, how do you cheshbon whether or not the gira nosha actually put the tam into the yarech? And the Mishnah said it was like the basar with the lefes, the meat and the turnips. That's the shear. Rav Huna ke basar barashay lefasais, like the meat in turnip tops, because the top of a turnip is stronger than its root, and therefore you would need more basar to impart a tam into the top portion of the turnips than its root. Okay, now this that we're saying that when you cook the basar with the gira nosha, it's going to be usher because of the tam. L'chayra Zok the Gemara must need to like Yatana. Did Tanya Rabbi Yishmael b'naish or Rabbi Yochanan Breiko Eimer ain't begidin b'nai same tam. There is no tam for a gid anasha. So l'chayr it's not going to impart any kind of tam in the basar for it. It's not nice same tam. Now Zok the Gemara. Hahu da asala kamei Rabbi Chanina, about such a case where the basar was cooked with a gid anasha. Have a Yosef Rabbi Yehuda bar Zavina abava. Rabbi Yehuda bar Zavina was sitting by the entrance. Ki nafak Omer le my Omer lach. When the person came out, Rabbi Yehuda bar Zavina said, "What did he say? Lagabe this basar Omer le sharya niale." He was matter. Omer le Zok Rabbi Yehuda hadar ayle. Bring it back in and ask him again. So Omar, when he went back in, Rav Chanina said, "Hi, man, the who's the one who's hacking me such a chinik over here? Zil Aimale Laman Yova Bova. Tell the one that's sitting by the entrance, Ain Begidin Benai Saint Tam, and therefore it's going to be mutter." When people would go to Rav Ami to ask about food that was cooked with a gid anasha, Mishader Lula Kamed Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Chaluv, he would send them to Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Chaluv, the Maribel Hetera, Mishum de Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. But Vilay, he himself, meaning Rav Ami himself, Leis Firle, he didn't hold this way. And the Gemara finally says, V'hilchasa Ain Begidin Benai Saint Tam, they do not give off any kind of flavor, and therefore whether or not the gid anasha was cooked, or it was moluach, or it was roasted with other things, it's only going to answer the gid anasha itself and not the rest of the food that's with it. But Rashi says only the gid anasha itself is what has no tam. But midrabanan, the shuman agid, all that chaylev that's around the gid anasha is going to actually give off tam. So practically speaking, it's going to still be usher, al says din derabanan. And we're going to call here and pick it up with gid anasha shesbashal for Shabbos Daf.